I always say that a genius is one who listens to their inner voice and follows their inner vision and lets the voice and the vision on the inside be louder than all opinions on the outside.
My name is Ed J.C. Smith. I got a second chance at life, and I'm here to help you live life on your terms. Okay, and welcome to Coaching Business Secrets. In today's episode, I'm very excited to meet one of my earliest mentors, Dr. John Demartini. Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited. I know you're inside and out. I've read all your books. I've crunched them. If it's okay, can you give a quick intro from yourself of how amazing you are, what you're doing now, and then we'll get down into it.
Well, I research and I educate. That's basically me. I sit in front of a computer and I love learning and I love sharing. I've been teaching for 48 years and now more than that. And I love helping people do something extraordinary with their life, help them maximize their awareness and their potential, and be inspired. I wanted to master my life since I was 17, and consciously, really around 20, I made a concerted effort to empower every area of my life. So anybody who might be interested in waking up their genius, creating a vastly successful business, becoming financially independent, having a global family dynamic, inspiring communicative relationship, anybody interested in having leverage in leadership roles in society, want to have vitality of energy, or want to be just inspired and on inspired missions. And that's what I've spent all these years working on, helping people do that.
The first time I heard your originations of your story, I believe you were 17 and as a surfer, and you the reason I bonded so much to your story, because I felt like I had the same story. You were told you had learning difficulties. I was labeled as dyslexic, and then you met is it Paul Sernberg? Paul Bragg. And you started on that journey of convincing yourself that you were a genius and that you can apply your wisdom. And do you still say that today?
I've not missed one day since November 18th, 1972.
I think that's amazing.
I don't get out of bed until that's inculcated many times. I always say that a genius is one who listens to their inner voice and follows their inner vision and lets the voice and the vision on the inside be louder than all opinions on the outside. And so that's what we mean when I say that.
And to a stage where you are today, for those that are listening that aren't aware of your immense knowledge, I mean, you've read over 30,250 something plus books by now.
Yes, it's 30,506 books now.
Okay, so I think the last time I looked at it was 150 countries. Are we
154 countries. 154
Nice.
countries.
Okay. 231 cities is when I had it logged.
No, 2,036 cities.
I heard that one wrong.
2,036 cities.
That's incredible. So do you have any idea the number of people that you've impacted on today?
Believe it or not, I've done my best to do it. I had a service that would monitor all of our print media and radio and television media. I haven't got on the podcast, so I'm having to actually ask the podcast, roughly what's their outreach. But we've kept record on it, and it's over the 6 billion mark when we put all of them together.
I'm just
with
taking
the movies,
notes.
the radio, television, newspapers, magazines, podcasts. We have 1,500 print medias that I've had articles in now.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, because every single coach, consultant, author, expert, that's at the end of the day their mission to get that out. So we're talking with an absolute legend, and again, just your roots of your story is exactly what inspired me to. I haven't read as many as that. I think I'm looking at my count stats as well, because I think it's an incredible number to have, so that you can really know that you're creating that impact. Now, Dr. John, right? I've been rated as number 10 out of 10 out of 10 question asking. So I've got some some pretty out there questions.
That's fine. Whatever you want to ask.
And I've gone through your interviews to see what sort of you haven't been asked, looking for things that kind of really will hopefully give a different perspective to you. So I'll pump fire these and then we'll build off the back of them. But just a real quick fire. What's the best question you've ever been asked? Which is kind of cheeky.
Well, that's probably one of the best ones.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. That's a great question.
Yes.
The most common questions I get are based on the perception of the hosts or the interviewers' needs of the people. So the greatest question is whatever will serve the information that I might provide would be able to serve those people most effectively. And that varies depending on the audience and the group that I'm being interviewed for. So if it's for children in education or if it's for I did a relationship interview yesterday that was quite hilarious. It's about sexual relationships for married couples. And it was hilarious. But the information that they were asking was matching what their needs of the people that were following it. So I don't know if there's a best question. I just say it's the questions that help reveal the information that people need most. That would be the great questions, the best questions that I've been asked. And I don't know, that varies based on the topic and the group and the people. Mm. The ones that allow me to bring out something that might be able to help specifically those individuals, those are the questions that are meaningful.
So I've heard you say many, many times, life is the quality of the questions that quality of your life is the quality of questions you ask, right?
Yes.
How does someone access that? Well,
there's a number of things. One is, what is the highest priority that you can be doing at this moment? You want to ask, what's the highest priority action? What is the highest priority perception? What is the highest priority association? What's the highest priority place to put income? You know, if you prioritize what's the highest priority book to read or thing to learn to feed your mind, what's the highest priority place to go? If you just constantly ask what's the highest priority, you're living from the most productive state in life you can do. And then the second one is anything that equilibrates the mind. When you're infatuated with something and you have an impulse towards it, you're probably conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides, blind or ignorant of the downsides. And then when you get there, you get smacked by them because you go, "Oop, didn't see those." Broadsided, you might say. And so whenever you're infatuated with something, a wise question is, what are the downsides? So you can see both sides. You don't have mindfulness when you have a conscious and unconscious split. You might have mindfulness when you have them both together at the same time. So any question that makes you aware of what you're ignoring with the unconscious and making you fully conscious is a question that liberates you from the bondage of the things that you infatuate and resent. Because anything you infatuate and resent will occupy space and time in your mind and run your mind and distract you as an impulse, as an instinct, in the amygdala, away from your executive function where you're most profoundly impactful. So any question, which is what your intuition is constantly attempting to do throughout the day, to make you aware of the parts you're ignorant of, is a liberating question. So if you're resentful to somebody, it's asking, what are the upsides? If you're infatuated with somebody, what's the downsides? And when you see both sides, you've extracted meaning out of that existential experience.
Beautiful. So as you uncover areas that you are taking ownership over, I've heard you say own the parts, right?
Yes.
Own the parts so you become whole, right?
Yeah. So what does that mean is if I'm infatuated with somebody, I'm conscious of their upside, I'm unconscious of their downside. And that in turn makes me conscious of my downside and unconscious of my upside. I'm too humble to admit what I see in them inside me.
Mhm.
And therefore I have a disowned, deflected, dismembered, dissociated, disempowered part, a void, an emptiness inside me that I'm disowning. I always say at the state of unconditional love, the soul, nothing's missing in us because we're not judging. But the second we judge somebody and put them on a pedestal, we'll minimize ourselves and we'll inject their values, trying to live in their values, trying to be somebody we're not. And the second we resent somebody, we'll be conscious of their downsides, unconscious of their upsides, and then conscious of our upsides and unconscious of our downsides. We'll be too proud to admit what we see in them is inside us. And that's another disowned, dismembered, deflected part. And so every time we judge, we cause deflections, disownments, voids. You might say conomic emptiness inside us that wants to be filled intuitively to neutralize the judgment so we can return to love and put people not on pedestals or pits, but put them in our heart. So we can be authentic, because if we're proud, we're not being who we are. If we're ashamed, we're not being who we are. It's only when we're centered and have equanimity within us and equity between ourselves and others that we actually be who we are. And we want to be loved for who we are, but if we're not being who we are, how are we going to be loved for who we are?
Do you find when you talk that sometimes people just don't, they don't know what to do? I like to sit and listen, and then you're contemplating that concept. Wow, thank God this is recorded. On Clubhouse the other day, you were pumping out answers, and I was like, we need this recorded. Anyway, but that was super. So is the goal of life then to, again, a view of goal of life, to find what, like, I suppose the word is like what triggers us into a negative emotion, and then come to awareness of that negative emotion so that we can be trigger free from it.
Yeah, transcend it, liberate from it. Well, Freud said that there was a yearning for pleasure, a hedonistic pursuit in our amygdala. Nietzsche basically said there's a will to power. And then Viktor Frankl said there's a will to meaning.
Mm.
And the distinction between us and other species is that we have the capacity to extract meaning out of our existence. And extracting meaning about our existence is being able to find the downs in the upsides and the ups and the downsides and get back to the mean. The mean is the center. Just like a stock market goes up above the mean and then goes below the mean. But when the stock goes above the mean, you're actually paying more for the stock than necessary. It's overpriced. And so that's the negatives to balance the up. And then if it goes down below the mean, you're getting the stock for cheaper. And that means you got value. And so that's the ups inside the downs. And the individual that extracts meaning out of things is able to see both sides and not be distracted by the volatilities and to be able to stay steady on its chief aim. But the individual that is trying to get rid of the pain and trying to get only the pleasure and the pleasure-seeking hedonism, they're going to gamble in the market, trying to buy low, sell high all the time. And typically they're gambling and they're skewing with their amygdala subconscious, skewing subjective biases, and they end up distorting things, and they're usually losing money. So extracting out the mean and finding the meaning, which takes out the judgment and neutralizes it and allows us to have fulfillment in life, and discover the hidden order in our apparent chaos. This is something that we innately, biologically, intuitively, and electronically and biochemically are designed to do and do every day in our brain.
So I love the concept of life. Like, we choose our meanings in life, and language creates the reality of which we have autonomy over. And I tried to kill myself when I was younger because of a relationship with my dad, and in that moment it was the worst thing. However, today it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. How do people, in your view, access awareness to control their, like, because you say your statement every day. I have my statement I say every day too, and it's a simple lesson, right? Language creates reality. What you say becomes who you are. Why don't why do people struggle with that, or how could they get better at it?
Well, I think that the majority of people conform to tradition, convention, or mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, which are outside authorities, and inject those authorities into their life, inject the values of those authorities into their life, those norms, and cloud the clarity of what they value most that's intrinsic. And as a result of it, that the uncertainty that occurs whenever you're not living by what's highest in your value and where it's most meaningful, that uncertainty makes you brain offload decisions to other people and question yourself and doubt yourself. And so you try to fit in, and your fear of being rejected instead of standing out to make a difference. How are you going to make a difference fitting in? You're going to make a difference by standing out, but it's frightening to stand out because most people will give in to the majority of people. Ernest Becker wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And this book talks about conforming to the collective heroism, the social heroism, and why do people, get stuck in that? It's a survival. If you were banished or abandoned in society and put out to, exile away from the crowd, you didn't survive. So there's a survival instinct to avoid being rejected and a survival impulse to try to fit in. And that at the same time, there's an intuitive calling to be our real self, authentic self, which is a unique hierarchy of values that nobody else has. So with the conflict between those, most people, 99% of the population, pretty well, submit to the conforming and give in to the fear of rejection instead of actually standing up and, first being opposed and ridiculed and then eventually become self-evident as a leader, an unborrowed visionary.
Do you think everyone has to go through like a pain in their life in order to get access to it, or can they get access to that sort of want to increase your awareness, thus increase your performance without going through pain?
I don't think it's a mandatory thing to have a pain. Some people learn through hitting bottom and then they make a change. That's cataclysmic change. In value structures, in axiology, you have what they call the gradual hypothesis and the punctate cataclysmic hypothesis on change of values. If individuals are living consciously or unconsciously in alignment with what they value most, they can adapt resiliently to ever greater changes, little tweaks and changes, kind of like Jim Collins says in Good to Great, incremental changes, constantly adapting to it and keeping up the current. Where people who are more rigid and more polarized and more in the amygdala and living in more fear of loss of the things they infatuate with and the fear of gain of the things that they resent, those individuals, because of the rigidity and kind of absolutist view, that takes a cataclysmic event to get them to wake up and make a change. I was speaking in Iran to the government of Iran, 22 ministers of the government there, and they asked me to speak on a full day on change management, because at that time, Obama was about to release the sanctions. This is before Trump put them back on there. And they were getting ready for the changes in their country because the economics were going to be more fluent. And I explained to them that the more engaged people are in their position, in their careers, or in their leadership roles, the more inspired they are about what they do, and the more they can see how their job duties are helping them fulfill what's deeply meaningful to them, what's really inspiring and high priority to them, the more resilient and adaptable they can make micro changes on a day-to-day basis. But if they're disengaged and uninspired, and they're going to work out of duty, they have to and got to and must and should and supposed to, and it's all imperative driven and extrinsically motivated, those individuals will resist change and say things like, well, I didn't get hired for this. Why do I have to change this? I don't want it. This is not what we, and they fight it. And then they end up having cataclysmic change to get them to make a difference. So we can do the same. If we live by what's really valuable to us, we make micro changes daily and we adapt, and we're very resilient. Because if you're neutral, you're not fearing the loss of the things you seek or fearing the gain of the things you're trying to avoid. But if you're highly polarized, you're rigid. And that rigidity of absolutism, it's like in our American politics right now. You have the Democrats and the Republicans and Pelosi and Trump. They're complete rigid black and white thinking processes. So all you did is just clash, and cataclysms are inevitable to get people to wake up. But people who are more resilient and adaptable and live with more meaning and live by priority, as we're helping coaches and entrepreneurs, if they can prioritize their life and find a way of getting paid handsomely to do what's really most meaningful and inspiring to them, and do it in a way that serves and helps fulfill what's most meaningful and inspiring to the client, and they can delegate the rest, and they're free to do only the highest priority things, they will literally morph gradually with whatever comes along the way, and they don't see anything in the way, they see things on the way, and they enjoy watching the transformation. But if they're black and white and they're very rigid and they feel trapped having to do what they're doing and they're not delegating, they're going to have more difficult adapting, and cataclysmic events have to wake them up.
And so for the entrepreneurs and the coaches, I know you've got a free resource. I just wanted to talk a bit, because again, that's getting clarity about what's really important to you really at the end of the day. Can you tell people where they can get access to that? Because I think that's a super powerful tool.
Yeah, let me develop that if you could, if you let me do that.
Sure.
Every human being, moment by moment, lives by a set of priorities, a set of values, things that are most to least important to them. And every entrepreneur has this. Every coach has this. And knowing what that really is and not guessing. I've been doing value determinations for over 43 years, more than 4 decades. And I would have to say that I've only met one individual that knew their values. I have one individual that's from Israel who's a woman who nailed it. What she thought and what we end up determining were exact. That's the only individual.
Wow.
Majority of people, without even being conscious of it, have infiltrated their thinking with shoulds and ought tos and supposed tos and got tos and have tos and must by society, by their authorities, by the people they admire, by the people they infatuate with, and they're injecting all those values. Think of it this way. Think of the time when you maybe dated somebody. Maybe you met this really hot chick or something, or I guess everybody's got different preferences, but let's say you meet this hot girl and you're so infatuated with her that you stop doing what you normally do in a day and you start doing things that you think are more in line with her. And because you're afraid to lose her, because you're so infatuated. And it's like a food, you want to eat it, but if you're afraid to lose your food, you'll starve. So in the process of doing it, you'll sacrifice what's really important to you to fit in, to be with them. And so anytime you meet somebody who thinks more intelligent than you, more successful than you, more wealthy than you, more savvy in relationship than you, more socially connected, and more people on Facebook, or more physically fit, or better looking, or somebody that's more spiritually aware, any moment you perceive that you are too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you, you're going to sacrifice what's truly important to you and inject some of the values of them to fit in. And it's hard to fight this. I've been observing this now for all these years. So when somebody says, what are my values or what are my core values? I guarantee you what their life is demonstrating and what they say they are not matching. And what they're saying is that idealisms, integrity, truth, peace, honesty, and they say all these idealisms, but it's basically moral hypocrisies in many cases. So I'm interested in knowing what the individual's real, true values, because that's determining how they perceive, decide, and act every day. And that's determining their behavior, their character, and their habits. So that's why on my website, drdemartini.com, there is a value determining process. It's 13-question questionnaire that will assist people in looking honestly at what their real values are, because it's going to ask them really objective information, like, what do you fill your space with? What do you spend your time on? I spend probably 14 to 18 hours a day on a computer researching, writing, and teaching. I'm full time on that. So if you look what my life demonstrates, it may not match what I fantasize. I could fantasize that I want to be an international sex symbol like Hugh Hefner or something like that, but there's no evidence of that. No evidence of that. But there is evidence that I research and teach every day. I love that. I've been doing it 48 years. So So you got to look at what your life really demonstrates and really look at how you're making decisions in order to help people prioritize their life so they can maximize the brain function. And that's what this is. It's 13 questions that's free, it's private, that they can come back to and store on there and come back and look at it again in a week, a month from now, a quarter from now, and help them discern what's really priority. Or if they're hiring people and knowing what's really priority. Because when you hire somebody, if the job description you're going to delegate to them does not match their values, you're going to have to micromanage them and push them uphill and distract yourself from what's really priority for your life. So that's why this is an important exercise for people.
Makes a lot of sense. And if they're not clear on that, then you can't have high performance habits, you can't have high thinking, you can't have all of the.
No, you're not going to maximize your performance, that's for sure. And because you maximize your awareness and potential in that highest value. Absolutely.
Clarity is power. So go over there, all right, to Dr. John. It's all on the main website, right? Dr. John Demartini's main
Dr.
website.
Demartini, just Dr. Demartini.com, drdemartini.com.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. I've heard you talk about a story in regards to how important it is to have your values aligned. I believe it was with your wife, who is no longer with us. For that, I'm very sorry. But I've heard you talk about the story, and it sounds amazing. About she said to you, or you said to her, and it was something about Venice, going to Venice.
Oh, you want the whole story?
No, I think it's it's just a short. I've heard it in different situations when you've talked about it in different. I think again, when you start to listen to someone for so long, I think it was in an event once / on someone else's, but it was a lovely story.
Let me give this story because it works both ways.
Okay.
My wife loved to go to Le Cirque restaurant in New York. And Le Cirque restaurant was owned by Sirio, who just passed away. He was a friend. And it was a high-end restaurant. And I would go there, and the food was a little bit too rich for me. I'm a real simple eater, and I don't drink any alcohol. And but she enjoyed a little glass of wine and a nice rich meal. And with the wine and everything else, we could walk away for $1,000 on a dinner. and so I had a goal of building wealth, not just spending it on food.
Yeah.
Do that every night. That's costly. So I didn't enjoy it because I'd have kind of an upset stomach because it's too rich, and I'm simple there. So I told my wife, I said, I don't mind going to the Cirque occasion, but too much of it it's just too rich for me. So my wife was brilliant. She was very knowledgeable. She understood some of the things I've been teaching. I think she understood it better than I did sometimes. And so she just 2 or 3 days went by, and she finally says, I was talking to Nurit, who's married to Vernon, and Vernon runs one of the largest companies in America. And Nurit was saying that he's got a bit of a challenge. And I told him that I think John can help him. So their favorite restaurant's Le Cirque. And I didn't know if you would like to go there, but I just know that if you chatted with him, in all probability, you could probably close him as a deal and do some consulting and help the company and him. And that could mean, thousands of dollars. Would you be willing to go to Le Cirque, even though it's not your favorite place, to go there to potentially get one of the big companies? And I said, absolutely. So in my values, be able to teach and consult for leaders, that was valuable. So she was smart. She knew what she was doing. Manipulation is when you project your values onto people, but don't really meet their needs. But caring is when you do the same thing and you meet the person's needs. My needs were being met. So I went to dinner, I closed the deal, and she was consistently looking for high profile people to go to dinner with, to make sure that I was going to dinner. Now that's because she cared enough about me. And she also called in advance Sirio and said, look, can you make some steamed fish and some steamed carrots and steamed broccoli and some multi-grain bread for my husband? He goes, absolutely. So I didn't have to eat all the rich stuff. So she solved all those problems and still got to have what she wanted because she was smart. And then when I would leave to go on tour, because sometimes I'd be gone for a month or two on tours around the world. If I would leave, if I just gave her a high five, babe, see you later, well, you're the best, I'd be castrated, or she'd be finding Hugh Jackman or something. But if I went up to her, which I did, I learned to, go up to her and hold her in my arms and just hold her and kiss her, caress her, and tell her I love her, which I did. I mean, she was an amazing and very beautiful woman. And I'd say that to her, and it said, I'm going on my tour again. I'll be gone for about a month. I'll probably make somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. And I would want to know if you would love to meet me in Venice in 30 days. What I can imagine is us, we could stay at the Daniela Hotel. We can go to, Cipriani's for dinner. We can go and go to the spa, and you can have this super high, gondola driver massage your back, and I'll get an 85-year-old, wilted little lady to do mine. And we'll go shopping and we'll do this. And I just want to take and have a romantic 3 days in Venice before I go on to Spain. And she says, I love you, honey. Thank you for working so hard. I'll make all the arrangements. I can't wait to see you in Venice. If I give her a win at doing what I love doing, I buy my freedom to do what I love by helping her do what she loves. But I have a responsibility, just like in selling, to care enough about the customer, which is in this case, your wife, to try to offer a value in their value system. That's the art of the game.
So that's the key to relationships.
That's the key to every relationship, whether it's your children, whether it is your customer, your employees, any human being that you're interacting with, that same law is going to apply.
I love that. So, Dr. John, what is it that someone would hold on? What is it? What's something that people misunderstand about you?
Well, I remember Emerson had a statement that says to be great is to be misunderstood. So I've just assumed that being misunderstood is a sign that you're making progress. But I'm sure that, people sometimes think, because I travel as much as I do and things that, sometimes people create this fantasy that, I have this enamored life or whatever, and I do in some respects. But most of the time I'm researching, I'm writing, and I'm trying to do what I can on webinars, podcasts, interviews, TV, radio, filming, whatever. So some of the glitz that people have fantasized and imagined that I might have, some of it's true, but a lot of it is just consistently, methodically, strategically doing what I love doing every day and building momentum doing it. And I think to some people, I think that they do this for anybody who's achieved anything. I think they sometimes exaggerate that and minimize themselves. And I don't think it's really fair to them. I think there's nothing that I do that can't be done by anybody. I just do it. That's all. I just keep doing it. I learned from Donald Trump. I know some people don't like Donald, but I've known him 28 years, almost 29. And we used to live in Trump Tower. So we lived underneath him. And my wife was friends with Ivana and Marla and Melania. So we've known them all. But anyway, he said to me one time when I was in his office, something really very simple. He says, you want to stay with something and build momentum with it and not waver from it until you've built such a momentum that you're unstoppable. And people will then recognize the brand that you've built as a result of that. And stay with something long enough. Don't start, stop, and go on, jump here and follow the newest trend and do that. Stick to what it is that is deeply meaningful. Mine's human behavior. Anything that's involved in maximizing human awareness and potential, I'm in. And I wanted to be known for the breadth and depth of information on maximizing that. So if I stay with that, you just stay with that, you build momentum. And many people are flittering around and haven't really found what's deeply meaningful to them. But find that. That's what the value determination is for, to help you find that and narrow it down so you can't wait to get up in the morning and be of service to people, so people can't wait to get that service.
How long for do you read every day these days?
It varies because some days I'm speaking the entire day. I may do 14-hour presentation, as you know. But anytime I'm not presenting, I may be nibbling. I don't spend a lot of time on food. I'm on that researching. I've got people from around the world who are specialists that send me research daily in different fields, from anthropology to physiology to astronomy to you name it, chemistry. And I'm also reading and writing every day.
Wow.
I mean, every single day there's articles going out, or there's books being made, or manuals being updated, and reading every single day. I don't miss a day. So that could be 3 hours, it could be 15 hours, it could be 18 hours, it could be 1 hour. It depends on what I have on that agenda that day. But I don't go a day without filling my mind with something that inspires me.
Do you listen to audio at all?
Well, today some you watch videos and audios online. When I was in my 20s, there were a thing called audio cassettes, and I listened to audio cassettes every day. I bought a set. There was a gentleman named Ed Tullison, and he had a life that I kind of modeled part of my life on. He traveled around the world and lived in the hotel suites of fine hotels around the world. And he did presentations in each city. And he'd have 1,000 people at least in each city. And then he had 100 audio cassettes on how to be an entrepreneur and how to live the life that you dream. And it was for $1,000. And once you bought that, wherever he was, you got to come in and just listen. And so he would sell 1,000 of those. And then those people would not always be traveling in all the different cities, but he just sold them. And he was a very fortunate man. And it taught me a lot because of the audio cassette. So I was listening to audio cassettes from the 20s. And if I was showering, I was listening to audio cassette. If I was writing, I was listening to audio cassette. I was eating, I was listening to. So I was reading or listening to something. There wasn't as much video then, back in the 70s, but there was definitely audio. And I filled my mind with audio programs consistently, particularly throughout the 80s, and produced a lot of them. I produced probably 1,400 audio cassettes myself during the 80s and early 90s.
Can you tell me about a client that touched your heart that you specifically remember? I know you got thousands.
Well, there's lots of them. I have one that just popped in my mind as you just said that, is a little 8-year-old boy that was having nightmares. And we identified where that was originating from. And then he ended up coming down and becoming one of my students. He was an autistic savant. And he was really gifted because he could read a book in minutes. And he was reading 40 books a day. But he couldn't function. He could barely tie his shoes. He couldn't dress himself. He couldn't do anything else, but he could read and devour information. So he became a student of mine. He was the youngest facilitator of my methodologies. He came and became a trained facilitator at age 9. He's now 18. He charges around $1,300 or $1,400 for a session. He's 18. He works with executives now. He's now speaking. He's now doing amazing things. But he touches my heart in the sense that when he attends my program, I ask him, how'd I do? And he said, you only made 2 errors. But you know, I took him to the we went to the Institute of Advanced Studies. I introduced him to Freeman Dyson, who's the one that took over Albert Einstein's position at Institute of Advanced Studies in astrophysics. And we went there and we did a 4.5-hour video dialogue or trialogue between him, Freeman, and myself on astrophysics, on cosmology, on all kind of interesting questions of biology, life in the universe. And he read a 800-page astrophysics book in 4 minutes and had a discussion with Freeman Dyson on that in astrophysics. And the 3 of us had a conversation, went way down the rabbit hole on the intelligence of the universe from the Big Bang, you name it. And so this young boy has got a special place in my heart because he's doing extraordinary things. And when you see these kind of things, it's definitely touching. So that's a client that I enjoy interacting with because of his brilliance.
What's the one thing, just what's the one thing some of your programs did for someone that you never expected it to?
know, I have sort of the expectations of, doing what I can. I set out when I was probably in my 20s.
Mm.
I wanted to take physiology and make hard science out of it. I wanted to take psychology, make a hard science out of it. I wanted to take sociology and theology and make hard sciences out of them. Not just faith, not just belief, but something reproducibly duplicatable and things. And so when I use the work that I do on people with health issues or psychological issues or sociological issues or even theological issues, I love solving those mysteries and helping them find the hidden order in their life and having their physiology change and heal, their psychology become inspired, their sociology become more of a leader role. Instead of following a culture, they build a culture, and they're inspired. So that's what I'm inspired by the most. That's what I love doing the most. But I don't, the unexpected, I sort of have an expectation for that. I'm working every day trying to solve those mysteries to try to make a science out of those things. So I have an expectation to get that. But sometimes I'm mind blown by how it works. I'm mind blown how it just worked. It just did it. We just accomplished it. And so those are the things that brings tears of gratitude to me, just to actually see it. Even though you know, and even though you have an expectation, it still blows your mind when you see it actually manifest. And you'd like to tell the world about it because you go, people don't know how much power they have in transforming their lives and doing something extraordinary with it.
I totally agree. This is a challenge for you, Dr. John, because I've got some quick fire questions and you're not allowed to go too deep. And I know you can go really deep. And I'm just conscious of the time. Best tip for making the world a better place?
Well, I don't think in terms of better or worse, because I see that the world is magnificent. And I believe that no matter what you do, you're participating in that magnificence. That's what I teach in the Breakthrough Experience. No matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love. Because there's always a pair of opposites, as Heraclitus said, and Anaxagoras said. So you can't screw up the universe. Every time you do it, the only time you think you make a mistake is when you compare your actions to somebody else's values. The only time you think somebody else makes a mistake is when you compare their actions to your values. And when you realize in their own values and your own values what just happened, you realize there's nothing to fix. So I don't think we have to improve anything. We have to wake up to the magnificence that's already there.
Wow, that's awesome. Best compliment you've ever received?
Well, the one that just popped in my head when you said that, I was in Hawaii at the Hyatt Regency Hotel at Waikiki, and I was speaking there and doing the Breakthrough Experience, my signature program, which I've done 1,120 times now. And in the back of the room, a little lady walked in, 4'7" with a hat on and pink outfit. And in the back of the room, she was standing back there. I couldn't see because it's a little darker back there compared to where I was. But during the next break, she came walking up to the front of the room and she grabbed my hand. She looked up to me. She's 4'7", grabbed my hand. And she says, "I'm Patricia Bragg." This is the daughter of Paul Bragg. And she says, "I was just listening to you. I felt like I was in the presence of my father.
Oh.
You remind me of my father.
Oh.
You're so inspiring to me." It brought a tear to my eye. So when she said that, that meant a lot because, she was I'd say the person that took on his role when he died and carried it on. And what's interesting, what's inspiring is she met my daughter there and she connected with my daughter. And then she got on the telephone with my daughter and said, if there's any way you can carry on your father's work, it was very rewarding for her to do the same. And my daughter is now carrying on my work and teaching the work and developing in her own fashion. But she's doing the same thing that Patricia did. So meeting her that day was pretty touching. Wow. And to see the impact it had on my daughter. So my daughter's I can pass the torch to her.
Oh, that's awesome. No barriers, right? All barriers are removed. There's no limitations, money, etc. What project would you develop to impact the world?
I would just continue doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't change a thing except continue doing it. I would take advantage of the new technologies as they emerge and the new opportunities, just like we connected on Clubhouse. That's new technology. And I would continue to do whatever I could do on radio, television, newspapers, magazines, podcasts, webinars, writing, film, whatever I can do to just keep researching and writing and traveling and teaching. I love what I do. I just continue doing it.
You can see that for sure. How would your parents describe what you do for a living?
How would they describe me?
Yeah. How would your parents describe what you do and for a living and how you are?
Well, they knew when I turned 18, when I came back home at age 18 from Hawaii, I told them that I wanted to step foot in every country on the face of the earth, and I wanted to become a teacher and philosopher. And they thought they never thought I was going to ever be able to read when I was a kid. That's what I was told. And so to see me wanting to learn and eventually work hard to figure out how to learn how to read and conquer that. I mean, they were inspired by the idea that I would do that. I wanted to also be involved in healing because I wanted to study physiology. And so I went on the path of teaching and healing. And they used to come to my classes and then they finally passed on. But yeah, I think they knew what I was committed to. They were inspired by it. They would attend and join me on some of the programs. My sister still does. Oh, and yeah, so I think if they were alive today, they would be, I think, inspired by it. I would have my mom and dad up on stage if they were alive today. They both have neurological conditions because they lived in a cotton defoliant area that sprayed, and many of the people there died of heavy metal disease. But they, if they were alive, I would have them right there in the front row, and I'd have, my dad would have a sense of humor, and he would probably say but whatever you say, you'd listen to.
Nice. You got dinner with 3 people. Who do you choose?
Who would I choose?
Yeah.
Alive or dead? Does it matter?
Alive or dead? Doesn't matter.
I think I would take, Socrates, Plato, and Einstein. Those would be the 3 I'd have at dinner.
Quick fire, your 18-year-old self advice to yourself when you were 18, what would you say?
You're on track, stay with it.
Nice. What should I have asked you that I didn't know enough to ask?
I know you've done great. I have no idea.
But like, if you think of that, what should people ask you that they don't ask you?
I don't know. I mean, the people will typically ask what's meaningful to them, and whatever that is, that's what's important. I do out of all of my studies, I've tried to distill things down to what I think is probably going to help people most efficiently. But of course, my bias is probably imposed on that. And if they don't have anywhere to start, I'll probably ask them what they would love to create in their life and how would they, because if they don't design it, other people do. Any area of your life you don't empower, other people overpower. So I would ask them questions to find out what's most meaningful to them, and then ask them, do they have a strategy to bring that into reality? And if so, can I be of service to help?
The most important thing that you've learned?
I think everything in your physiology, everything in your psychology, everything in your sociology, everything in your theology, and everything that's ever going on in your life, in your business or in finance or any area of your life, it's all trying to get you to be authentic. It's all a feedback to get you to be you. The magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself. And giving yourself permission to be you is the key. We so often compare ourselves to others and put people on pedestals or put people in pits and minimize ourselves or exaggerate ourselves instead of just be ourselves. It's actually, they call it superiority complex and inferiority complex because it's complex. Our life's more complex than we judge. But there's Hermetic principle that says the pursuit of maximum simplicity. And the pursuit of maximum simplicity is the one essential being that underlies all the personas and masks that we cover it with. So being willing to be the most essential self, the real true us, that's got tears of gratitude for just being, is where it's at. And I think that everything that's going on is a symptom guiding us back to that. So that's having the foresight to realize that, I think, is a great gift.
So we've got two more, right? Last two. I love it when you talk about the universal laws and like the one to many. Really short, like how does the one to many affect our decisions?
Well, when you're dating many people, you're looking for the special one. And when you got the one, you find the one, you're wondering about the many. When you're new in a city and you don't know anybody, you want to find fit into. And then the second you fit in, you're going to want to stand out. So the law of the one to many automatically is the same as monarchy, democracy, the law of peace, law of war, the law of marriage, law of divorce, all polarities at all scales. That's the most universal law I was able to find in 299 different disciplines that I've read and written about. And so it's basically the same as gravity is taking many and moving it into one, and radiation is starting from a point source and radiating out into many. So every law, chemistry has an attraction or repulsion. Attraction is moving towards one, repulsion is moving towards many. Every area of study that you can do, even in neurology, in anthropology, in physics, this law is the most universal law I was able to find. And it was defined by Empedocles, actually. Empedocles said in his time, back in the 5th century, almost 6th century, he said that there's love and strife. And he says in there, he was the source of the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth. This is very ancient, basic stuff. But he said that when the elements are integrated, you have love. When they're disintegrated, you have strife. And the 2 forces of nature are love and strife, or union and division. And if we look very carefully, we'll see that that applies. That's why there's peace and war, and there's marriage and divorce, and there's, marriage and divorce, and there's alkalinity and acidity, integrating and reduction and oxidation. Every field has the same law, but they got a different name for it. It's called the law of similars and differences by Mortimer Adler. And when you infatuate with somebody, you see more similarities than differences. When you resent somebody, you see more differences and similarities. When you infatuate, you want to become one with them. When you're resentful, you want to be separate from them. And these are the basic laws of life. And understanding that law as it applies to every discipline gives you an advantage in the world. That's why I try to teach that.
Wow. You can see why so many people love your work, and you've just got a magnificent mind. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. On our last note, though, which I always finish all my interviews with, the meaning of life, Dr. John.
Well, just as Albert Camus said, that there's no universal meaning. The meaning is expressed at the individual voids and values of each individual. You could ask the question, what's the purpose of it all? Plato said, for the sake of love. Okay, well, I define love as a synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites. So all the dualities and all the complementary opposites that make up the universe, which are showing up as the one and the many, all are there to integrate into love in a conditional state in the form of the many, and in the unconditional state in the form of the one. I think this whole thing is just to teach us how to love.
I love you. You're amazing. So one more time, go get your values determination assessment, because it's going to set you free, and clarity sets you free. And on a daily basis, if you're clear about what is important to you, then you can live a life of meaningfulness, purpose, and all of the things that you desire. So just tell them, Dr. John, one more time where they can get it.
Just drdemartini.com, DRDEMARTINI.com, drdemartini.com. You can go there and go to determine your values. Or if you're interested in more information from me, go to my podcast, Dr. Demartini Show.
All the links will be below as well.
Or link there. Or you can spend the rest of your life on my website. There's so much information on there. You almost have to believe in reincarnation as a Buddhist to be able to have the time to be able to read all the stuff that's on there.
I just want to say thank you from the deepest part of my heart. Honestly, that was the best hour I've spent with anyone ever. It's
Thank you.
priceless. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording.
Well, thank you for the great questions. Pardon me for not having, direct answers on some of them, but thank you.
No,
for the,
you were great.
For the
I'm just going to stop recording now, Dr. John. If you're a coach and consultant, you're tired of not getting clients at the click of your fingers, then go grab a copy of my book at www.coachingbusinesssecrets. It's a straight line approach so that you don't have to get overwhelmed, so you don't have to worry about whether it's going to work for you. All right, we're talking scripts, web scripts, ad scripts, you name it, it's all included. It's actually $100 plus, and I'm giving it away for a fraction of that, less than a cup of coffee, so you can get deep down into that, and so you can finally grow the business that you really want to grow without all the hassle. That being said, no matter what happens, never give up on your dreams. I cannot wait to see you on the next video.